Unit 7, Day 1. Decide whether each of the following numbers is rational or irrational. If it is irrational, explain how you know. So 0.333 and the last 3 is repeating. It is rational because the 3 repeats. Square root 4, if I put my calculator, second, x squared 4, square root 4 equals 2. It's a perfect square, so it's rational. So it's a perfect square. And then square root 2 equals 1.414213, and so forth. We know that it's a non-perfect square because it's not a whole number, so it's going to be irrational. Non-perfect square. 1.414213. The decimal terminates, so it is rational. Pi equals 3.141592. Pi is irrational. It never ends. 11, it is rational because it's a whole number. 1/7 equals 0.142857. It repeats, it's rational, and it's a fraction. And decimal repeats. Got that. Zero is rational because 0 over any number is going to be 0. It's a whole number. Solving equations using square roots. Solve and check. Okay, and show all work is what solve means. So we have, number 1, we have x squared equals 81. So my goal is to find out what the x is. To get the x by itself, I need to take the square root of the x because the inverse of squaring a number is taking the square root. So the square root of x squared equals x, and the square root of 81 equals 9. So x equals 9. So if I, to check it, 9 squared equals 81, 9 squared equals 81, equals 81, it checks out. 2, 3a squared equals 48. So the first thing I want to do is to get the a squared by itself. So to do that, I'm going to divide by 3, both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, a squared. 48 divided by 3 gives me 16. Okay, just like problem number 1, the inverse of squaring a number is taking the square root. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So square root of a squared equals a, and the square root of 16 equals 4. So if I check it, it'd be 3 times 4 squared equals 48. 4 squared equals 16. So 3 times 16 equals 48. Checks out. Number 3, 7n squared equals 175. So first thing to do is I'm going to divide by 7 on both sides. Divide both sides by 7. 7 divided by 7 equals 1. 175 divided by 7 equals 25. So n squared equals 25. Take the square root of both sides because the opposite of squaring the number is taking the square root. Square root of n squared equals n. Square root of 25 equals 5. So check it. 7 times 5 squared equals 175. 7 times 25 because 5 squared equals 25. 7 times 25 equals 175. 4. 190 equals 4b squared minus 6. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 6 to both sides. So plus 6 plus 6. So negative 6 plus 6 gives me 0. 190 plus 6 gives me 196 equals 4b squared. Now I'm going to divide by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 196 divided by 4 equals 49 equals b squared. Take the square root of both sides. B squared, the square root of b squared equals b. The square root of 49 equals 7. So if I check it, 190 equals 4 times 7 squared minus 6. 4 times 49 minus 6. 4 times 49 is 196 minus 6 equals 190. So it checks out. So 7 equals B. Number 5, d squared plus 5 equals 41. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So d squared equals, that'd be 0. 41 minus 5 equals 36. Take the square root of both sides. Square root of d squared is d. Square root of 36 is 6. So we'll check it. 6 squared plus 5 equals 41. 6 squared is 36. Plus 5 equals 41. 36 plus 5 equals 41 equals 41. Number 6, negative 42 equals 7b squared minus 385. So I'm going to add 385 to both sides. Negative 385 plus 385 equals 0. So it leaves me 7b squared on the right. And negative 42 plus 385 gives me 343 divided by 7. 343 divided by 7 gives me 49 equals b squared. Take the square root of b, because remember, the inverse of squaring a number is taking the square root. Take the square root of 49. Square root of b squared equals b. Square root of 49 equals 7. So if I check this, negative 42 equals 7 times 7 squared minus 385. So negative 42 equals 7 times 49 minus 385. 7 times 49 equals 343 minus 385. Hoping it's going to equal negative 42. Equals negative 42, negative 42. Solving equations using cube roots. D cubed equals 512. So the inverse of cubing a number is to take the cube root. Now remember, to take the cube root, you're going to hit 3 in your calculator, second, and then the house top key. Okay, so I'm going to take the cube root of both sides. Cube root of d cubed equals d, and the cube root of 512 equals 8. So 8 cubed equals 512. So in your calculator, you would put 8, house top 3, 512 equals 512. Number 2, negative 1/4 cubed equals 2. So this really should say negative 1/4 x cubed equals 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by negative 1/4. So I'm left with x cubed equals negative 8. Take the cube root. So the cube root of x cubed equals x, and the cube root of negative 8 equals negative 2. Okay, so if I check this one, it would be negative 1/4 times, times negative 2 cubed equals 2. So negative 2 cubed equals negative 8. So negative 1/4 times negative 8 equals 2. Negative 1/4 times negative 8 does equal positive 2, and 2 equals 2. So it checks out. Number 3. 3b cubed equals 1029. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1029 divided by 3 equals 343. B cubed. Take the cube root of both sides. Cube root of b cubed equals b, and the cube root of 343 equals 7. So to check my answer, 3 times 7 cubed equals 1029. 7 cubed. So 3 times 343 equals 1029. Three times 343 gives me 1029 equals 1029. Checks out. Number 4. W cubed minus 12 equals negative 6. So I'm going to add 12 to both sides. Okay, so I have negative 12 plus 12 gives me 0. Negative 76 plus 12 gives me negative 64. So w cubed equals negative 64. We'll take the cube root of both sides. Cube root of w cubed equals w, and the cube root of negative 64 equals negative 4. So check my answer. Negative 4 cubed minus 12 equals negative 76. So negative 4, I'll stop 3, gives me negative 64 minus 12 equals negative 76. Negative 64 minus 12 equals negative 76 equals negative 76. So my answer checks out, so W equals negative 4. Number 5. Negative 600 equals 2/3 x cubed plus 75. So I'm going to subtract 750, not 75. I'm going to subtract 750 from both sides. 750 minus 750 gives me 0. And negative 600 minus 750 gives me negative 1350 equals 2/5 x cubed. I'm going to divide by 2/5. Negative 1350 divided by 2/5 equals negative 3,375 equals x cubed. Take the cube root of both sides. X equals 15. Okay, so to check my answer, be negative 600 equals 2/5 times 15 cubed plus 750. 15 cubed equals 3,375 plus 750 times 2. So we have, oh, I forgot my negative sign here. So it's negative 15 equals x. So 2/5 times negative 3,375 equals negative 1,350 plus 750. We hope that equals negative 600, and it does. Compare using greater than, less than, or equal to. So number one, we got the cube root of 0.001 and 0.01. The first thing we need to find out is what the cube root of 0.001 is, which is 0.1. So 0.1 greater than, less than, or equal to 0.00. So we look at our ones, they're both 0, so we move to my tenths. So I got 1 and 0. 1 is greater than 0, so 0.1 is greater than 0.01. Number two, negative 1/4 is greater than, less than, equal to the cube root of negative 8 over 125. So the first thing we need to figure out is what is the cube root of negative 8 over 125, which would be negative 2/5. So now I have negative 1/4 and negative 2/5. I'm going to take these to a decimal to make it easier to compare. So 0.25, negative 0.25, and negative 0.4. Negative 0.25 is greater than negative 0.4, because remember, when we're dealing with negative numbers, the bigger the number gets, the smaller it actually is. Find the side length of a square. Find the side lengths of S of the square. Area is 169 inches square, so we know for area it's going to be length times width equals area. Okay, so 1S is my length, 1S is my width, so S times X is going to give me S squared equals 169 inches square. So to find out what the S is, we got to take the square root of both sides. So square root of S squared equals S, and the square root of 169 equals 13. Each side is 13 inches. A cube-shaped packing box has a volume of 64 cubic feet. What is the side length of the box? The formula for the volume V of a cube is V equal S cubed, whereas S is the length of one side of the cube. So we know that the volume is 64. We do not know what the side lengths are. So we'll take the cube root of both sides. So, because the cube root of S cubed equals S, and the cube root of 64 equals 4. Finding the side length. A cube-shaped planter holds 27 over 512 cubic feet of potting soil. What is the side length of the planter? So we know that this is going to be my volume. So 27 over 512 equals S cubed, because the volume is length times width times height. So I'm going to take the cube root of both sides. So S cubed equals S, and the cube root of 27 over 512 gives me 3 over 8. So the side length is 3/8. Pythagorean theorem. This only works on right triangles. Okay, remember, right triangles is 90 degrees. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So A and B are legs. So these are your legs. And C is the hypotenuse. The legs must touch the right angle, and the hypotenuse is across from the right angle. So you see how it's across right here, and the legs touch the right angle. In each right angle, find the missing length. Length to the nearest tenth. Show all work. Okay? So it doesn't matter which side is your A or your B. Some will make A equals 6, B equals 8. So now I have 6 squared plus 8 squared equals C squared. So in your calculator, remember to find the square root, you put 6 housetop 2 or 6x squared. So 6x squared equals 36. 8 squared equals 64 equals C squared. 36 plus 64 equals 100, and C equals C squared, okay? So I want to know what C is, not C squared. So I have to take the cube root, or not the cube root, the square root of both sides. So the square root of C squared is C, and the square root of 100 is 10. So my missing side is 10. C equals 10. Legs, 3 feet and 4 feet. Show all work. So we want to know what the hypotenuse is. So one leg is 3, 4, and this is my C, my hypotenuse. So 3 squared plus 4 squared equals C squared. What's 3 squared? 3 squared equals 9. 4 squared equals 16 equals C squared. 9 plus 16 equals 25 equals C squared. To find just C, we have to take the square root of both sides. Square root of C squared equals C, and the square root of 25 equals 5. So 5 is my hypotenuse, so it'd be 5 feet. Legs are each 6 inches. Okay, so both my legs are 6 inches, and we're missing my C. So 6 squared plus 6 squared equals C squared. 6 squared equals 36, plus 36 equals C squared. 36 plus 36 equals 72 equals C squared. Take the square root of both sides to get C by itself. Square root of C squared equals C, and the square root of 72 is 8.48, and we're going to round it to the nearest tenth, so it'll be 8.5. So it goes to 8.48, and we're going to round to the nearest tenth to be 8.5. Legs are 8 centimeters and 15 centimeters, and we're missing our C. So this doesn't have the formula written here. So we have, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A squared is 8. A squared equals 8 squared plus 15 squared equals C squared. 8 squared equals 64. 15 squared equals 225 equals C squared. So 64 plus 225 equals 289 equals C squared. Just the C, so I need to take the square root of both sides. Square root of C squared equals C, and the square root of 289 is 17. So C equals 17. Darla hikes due north for 6 kilometers. Then she turns due east and hikes 3 kilometers. What is the direct distance between her starting point and stopping point? Round to the nearest tenth of a kilometer. So she's going to go north for 6 kilometers. So this is 6 kilometers. Then she goes east 3 kilometers. We made a right angle. We want to know what is the distance between. So we want to know the distance between the starting point and stopping point, the direct distance. Okay, so it would be A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A squared is 6 squared plus B squared, which would be 3 squared, equals C squared. 6 squared equals 36. 3 squared equals 9, equals C squared. 36 plus 9 equals 45, equals C squared. we don't want to know what c squared is, we want to know what just c is, so we have to take the square root of both sides. That equals c, and the square root of 45 equals 6.7. So it's 6.7 kilometers. A television is measured by a diagonal dimension of its screen. For example, a 24-inch television has a diagonal measure of 24 inches. A television screen is 16 inches high and 22 inches wide. What is the diagonal dimension of the nearest integer? So it's 16 inches high, and it's going to be 22 inches wide. I'm going to go ahead and make my whole TV. So 16 inches, 22 inches wide, but it wants to know this part. It wants to know the diagonal part. So this is my C, my missing piece. Okay, so we'll use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Remember, we're going around to the nearest integer. So a squared will be 16 squared plus 22 squared equals c squared. 16 squared equals 256. 22 squared equals 484 equals c squared. So this is 740 equals c squared. Take the square root of both sides. And square root of 740 is 27.2. We're going around to the nearest integer, so it's going to be 27 inches. Can you form a right triangle with the three lengths given? So when we have this, the two smaller lengths are going to be your legs. So 5 would be a leg, would be A, 6 will be B, and 10 will be my C, okay? So remember my equation, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay, so A will be 5 squared, B will be plus 6 squared equals C equals 10 squared. Okay, so I want my left and right side to both equal each other. So 5 squared equals 25, 6 squared equals 36, 10 squared equals 100. 25 plus 36 equals 61. 61 is not equal to 100, so no, we cannot form a right triangle with these three lengths. Can you form a right triangle with the three lengths given? So we're going to do the same thing as we did the slide before. I know my largest length is going to be my C, and then my two smaller ones are going to be my legs, my A and my B. So we have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So A is 24 squared plus B is 32 squared equals C is 40, so it'll be 40 squared. So 24 squared equals 576. 32 squared equals 1024. And 40 squared equals 1600. So if I add 576 plus 1024, I get 1600 equals 1600. So those are equal to each other. So yes, we can form a right triangle with these three lengths. Finding the distance in a coordinate plane. Find the distance between -2, 5, and 4, -3. So I'm going to plot my points. So -2 and +5, and 4 and -3. So I'm going to draw my triangle. See, it makes a little right angle here. We want to know the distance. So this is the distance I want to know right here. Okay? So from here, this side length is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. So remember, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So A squared equals 8. squared plus b would be 6 squared equals c squared. 8 squared equals 64. 6 squared equals 36 equals c squared. 64 plus 36 gives me 100 equals c squared. Take the square root of both sides. Square root of c squared equals c. Square root of 100 equals 10. So the distance between these 2 points is 10. Find the distance between 1 and 2. So implied 1 and 2, and then -3, +5. So we're going to draw my little triangle. Here's my little right angle. So this would be 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is my C, my missing length. Okay, so a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So a squared equals 3 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared. 3 squared equals 9. 4 squared equals 16 equals c squared. 9 plus 16 equals 25 equals c squared. I don't want to know what c squared is. I want to know what c is, so you have to take the square root of both sides. Square root of c squared equals c, and square root of 25 equals 5.